So what I've tried to do, I have created a summary of the remaining portion of this chapter, and I have already uploaded this on the drive along with the third set of MCQs. So maybe you can check it. I will post the link of Google Drive in some time once everyone has joined. Those who already have the link, there is no change in the link, but still for the benefit of all, I'll post it again. So let's start with the discussions. So this is the way in which I normally prefer to make my notes whenever I study any topic. I create diagrams, I create tables, I create charts out of it. So of the remaining part of the chapter, I have created a summary notes which will help all of you to revise. Content is only from the module, so nothing as such to worry about. Is there any additional content? No. This is just for revising it quickly. It helps me in covering the chapter, covering the portion in a speedy manner. So let's start. I think we had started with secondary or manufacturing sector, and we had discussed about the major investments which have happened in recent past. Now, some of the government initiatives which government has taken to uh, boost the manufacturing sector. So let's start with that. As of now, as of October 2018, government had released a national policy on electronics, had the budget of $400 billion for creating an electronics manufacturing industry. Now, this all is nothing but a part of Make in India, where government in 2014 launched this, uh, I would say, mission rather than a scheme, that India should also become a manufacturing hub for a lot of countries, a lot of companies, and more investors should come in India and set up their manufacturing base. Not audible? Audible, not audible? Audible. Great. Okay. Thank you. Make in India was something which really was is focusing on creation of job and economic development, and to give an Indian economy a global recognition. That's what the objective of Make in India was, or is rather. And, the focus out of that Make in India scheme was they identified a list of industries and list of cities which they call it as smart cities, where the focus will be to develop. So the industries have a wide range of list. The focus of Make in India was that our manufacturing. So in past we have seen that Made in India is not uh, looked at in terms of quality with greater respect. So the focus of Make in India was to zero defect the production process. Our production or our manufacturing should have zero defect, so that our products should not get rejected in the global market just because of the quality is of substandard. But at the same time, the focus should be on the manufacturing does not create a negative impact on the environment. So that's what sustainable growth is all about. So the focus was zero defect and zero effect on the environment. As a part of this, when Prime Minister, respected Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched this mission in the year 2014, he also focused that we will have to simultaneously work on the international marketing campaign, and that's why he traveled all across the globe. Major objective behind this Make in India scheme was to facilitate investment in the industries, to foster innovation and creativity in the industries, to focus on enhancing the skills of the people involved, because without focusing on the development of skill and education, the manufacturing quality will not improve, the systems will not improve, the processes will not improve. And another important focus of that initiative is to protect the intellectual property which belongs to India. Now, the sectors which were identified under Make in India included electronics market also, and similarly, a lot of focus has been given to uh, electronics segment and not audible. Am I audible? Not audible. Yes, to me it looks fine. It's working properly from my end. Yeah. So as a part of that, national policy on electronics was also introduced to develop the electronic manufacturing industry by 2025. Today, we all know that a lot of focus or a lot of respect to electronics is from China, and that's where government focuses on to reduce the dependency on the Chinese market. As a part of promoting the manufacturing in India, they exempted 35 machine parts which are involved in the manufacturing of a mobile handset. So they exempted the 35 machine parts from the custom duty. Uh, a new industrial policy is also proposed. It was supposed to be announced or launched in the year 2020. In fact, the draft policy was already made available to a lot of forums for comments, for inviting public comments. And let's see when it comes out. But as of now, it was ready. It was proposed to be introduced. It was the first industrial policy which government is planning to introduce after the industrial policy of 1991. Those who are not able to hear me, I think check at your end. I think everything is working good from my end. Check the internet bandwidth. Now, we all know the uh, important announcement with the finance minister made in the budget of 1819, where they reduced the income tax rate. Earlier it was 30%, it was reduced to 25% for the companies. And obviously, it was up to the companies whose turnover is less than 250 crores. Plus, there was there were some additional benefits introduced, a lesser rate of taxes for the new and manufacturing companies which will be set up. So government is also focusing on boosting the sectors, manufacturing sector. A lot of investment is proposed from the government side also to improve the infrastructure. Now we have a foreign trade policy in force 2015 to 2020. The new policy will come out once the COVID pandemic situation is a little subsidized. But till that time, the new policy comes out, the old policy will continue to be in force. Now, foreign trade policy is a policy which a document which uh, prescribes the various incentives which government offers. Uh, those who are not able to hear, I suggest please try to disconnect and join again. Maybe I will take a pause of a minute. I think from my end, it's working fine. So sometimes WebEx has a issue while connecting to the audio. Best way is to disconnect and join again, or maybe change your position. Maybe switch to hotspot if you're using a Wi-Fi. Sometimes that helps. Okay. So under the foreign trade policy, government announces incentives and benefits which they offer. And the second part of the policy document is also the procedural part. So under the midterm review means once the policy was introduced, the government reviews the policy, makes certain amendments because 5-year policy will need a lot of flexibility. This is a kind of note only, Kushi. I have uploaded this summary notes which I have created on Google Drive. You can take it from there. Now, under the midterm review, the MSME segment, which also has been of lot of importance from the economy perspective, and we have seen in the economic package which government announced, emphasis has been given to the MSME sector. And therefore the export incentives for those in MSME sectors which are labor intensive were increased by 2%. So again, incentives were increased so that the cost of operation goes down and the products can be offered to the market, global market at economical price. Then Government of India launched a phased manufacturing process, primarily for mobile manufacturing, mobile handset manufacturing, to add more smartphone components under the Make in India initiative. So the focus is the electronic markets contributes largely to the growth of in manufacturing sector because India has one of the largest base of mobile phone users. And today, whatever mobile phones we purchase are mostly imported ones. So the focus is because we have a large base of consumers We should take advantage of that and not any other company from far. Hence, the focus you will see is on mobile handset manufacturing. Next is increase in FDI in defense. So it was proposed to increase from 49 to 51, but recently, maybe 10 days ago, government has increased the FDI in defense segment up to 74%. So it was proposed to be increased to 51. You will find written 51 in module, but actually the increment which has happened in the FDI limits, FDI stands for foreign direct investment. So we will discuss about this in a short while. So as of now, there are limits set up by the government for respective sectors. For defense sectors, it is not 100% allowed yet. It is 74% only. Earlier it was 49. Now, why the limits are increased? Because if we want investors to come to India, we have to allow foreign investment in the sectors also. A lot of people are saying not able to hear. I would say once again request you to join again, disconnect and join again. Yep. So defense is one segment. So the focus, if you'll see, wherever the country is importing a lot, the focus is to shift the manufacturing of those products to India. Yes. So defense is again is one segment where one sector where a lot of imports are done. So focus again is to have a manufacturing facilities of those companies also to be set up in India. Hence, there is an increase in FDI limits. Then Ministry of Defense has also approved the strategic partnership model because defense is one sector where it was restricted, but now government has been uh, dwelling upon to liberalize that segment also with proper controls, obviously. So they have approved a strategic partnership model to tie up with the foreign players. PMP means phased manufacturing process. I was not able to connect earlier, so don't know which topic is going on. It's your secondary sector, manufacturing sector. We are discussing government initiatives. Auto one available. Okay, those not able to, please connect and join again. Okay. SME full form is micro, small, and medium enterprises. Page number I'm referring the module as such. I think it is on the page 90 or 91, somewhere around 90, 91. Okay. Now, MSIP scheme was also extended till 31st of December. This scheme is no more in force right now, but the scheme was introduced by the government to provide some special incentives. It was MSIP stands for Modified Special Incentive Package Scheme. Again, for the electronic segment, there was this scheme launched, uh, providing them the incentives. So incentives were in the form of subsidies for the fresh investments being made in the uh, sector for the capital expenditure. So for special economic zone, 20% subsidy was given for the investments in SEZ, and 25% subsidy was given to the non-SEZ units. So again, it was to the in sector who are into electronic segment. Clear? So this chapter is lesson number 5. In that we are discussing manufacturing sector. This chart is already uploaded in the PDF version on the Google Drive, so you can download it from there. The link of the drive, I will post it again. Okay, Saloni. Now let's go to the tertiary sector. Now there is a index, Nikki India Services Purchasers Managers Index, which is one of the important statistical data which the government uses. Now that PMI index showed that service segment in India are at 53.8%. So what we can understand out of that is one of the major contributor to the growth of economy is service sector, tertiary sector. Now, service exports have been the key driver of India's economic growth, and to promote more and more uh, exports from the sector, government also has been introducing a lot of schemes or initiatives have been taken. So some of the major government initiatives which we will have to study is first the SEIS scheme, Service Exports Incentive Scheme. Uh, Again, this is a part of foreign trade policy where duty scrip credits are given. What is duty scrip credits? If a company has exported 100 crores service exports, now service exports does not include any exports. There are a list of services, category of services which are defined in the policy, which are eligible for this kind of benefit. So IT, information technology, is not a part of this scheme. Okay. So services like consultancy, business support services, legal services, all these services are a part of SEIS. SEIS stands for Service Exports Incentive Scheme. Now, he has exported 100 crores in the form of service exports, which means no goods have been exported, but service has been exported. Then out of this 100 crores, they will be rewarded with the duty script credits. Now, duty script credit is nothing but a document, you can say, where it has a monetary value, and the monetary value is decided based on the turnover of exports which a company has achieved. So let's say the export are eligible for 3% of the credit. So of 100 crores, 3% duty script credits will be issued. Now this credit, duty script credits, can be used by the company for importing and for payment of custom duties. But if a company, let's say, is not into the sector where they need to import anything, then these duty script credits are tradable in the market. So this can be sold, transferred to another company at a consideration. There are companies who facilitate this kind of transactions to happen in the market. So that's what the SEIS scheme is all about. If I'm exporting, then I get an additional incentive in the form of script credits, duty script credits, which can be sold in the market. Now, in the midterm review of the foreign trade policy, the SEIS limits were increased by 2%. So the reward is ranging between 3% to 5%. Okay, Ayush, what do you want me to explain again? SEIS. Okay, SEIS is a scheme which government has introduced to promote export of services. Now, we have till now discussed about agricultural sector, what initiatives government has taken. We have discussed about manufacturing sectors, what government has taken as an initiative. For service sector, which is major contributor to the growth of economy, government has introduced a lot of benefits. One of the benefit is SEIS scheme, which is a part of foreign trade policy. SEIS stands for Service Export Incentive Scheme. You have the reference material in the module which has been provided on page number 92. If you have the module in front of you, you check the page number 92. Now, what is duty script credit? Duty script credit is nothing but, for your simple understanding, a document which has a monetary value. And how that monetary value is derived? That is derived on the basis of the export turnover which a company has achieved. If a company has achieved a turnover of 100 crores, then 3% of the export turnover will be, let's say, the benefit. Clear? 3% is duty script benefit which is offered. There is a list of services which are covered. IT and IT enabled services, which is a major service export category, is not a part of the SEIS scheme. Right? There are a lot of services, other services which are covered, which includes research and development, rental services, rental of ships, aircrafts, advertising services, market research, business support services, uh, entertainment, radio, television services, sound recording, construction and related engineering services, designing services, education services. These are the services which are covered. If a play company is into any of this segment, so we as of now don't need to focus on the SEIS too much, what is included and what is not. For your limited interest perspective, I would say there are some sectors which are excluded. IT being one of the major export category of services is excluded, but rest all are included. There is a list which has been provided in the policy. So this is to primarily focus on boosting the service exports. Next is digital communication policy, which government has introduced to focus on uh, the improvement of the communication and related infrastructure. So it has a threefold mission, which is first connect India. So creating the infrastructure to connect, including the rural parts in the digital communication. Then second is propel India, which is to enable the technology uh, and foster innovation and more and more uh, manufacturing companies to be set up in the communication sector. And third is to secure India, ensuring the safety and security of digital communications, because that's again a very, very important part, because whatever we do, we have a lot of dependency on technology today. IPR stands for intellectual property rights. Now, national tourism policy also has been introduced. What do you want me to explain, Disha? 2 points. Which 2 points? Page number page number 92, 93. IPR, intellectual property rights. I stands for Purchasers Manager Index. Okay. Now, national tourism policy again was introduced in the year 2015. The focus was to encourage more and more tourism in India, and to encourage the citizens of India as well as foreign tourists to explore their own country. And then some must-see destinations were identified, and a lot of investments is going in the tourism sector, which also is unfortunately one of the worst affected sector during this COVID situation. Let's see how soon. Yes, our syllabus will be completed, Kritika. What is National Health Policy 2017? The focus was on universal health coverage and to provide quality healthcare services to all the citizens of India at affordable cost. And now we have Ayushman Bharat also as one of the scheme under the uh, health sector. So government is also focusing on development of the healthcare sector. Now then there are FDI policy. changes which have been introduced by Reserve Bank of India in consultation with the central government. FDI we will discuss a little later also, but as of now there are sectors policy given by Reserve Bank of India from time to time, where in which sector how much investment is allowed is given in the sectoral policy. Now that is this sectoral policy has undergone change from time to time. 100% FDI in automatic route. Auto route is where no need to take any approval from Reserve Bank of Government. No approval is required. Investment can come without any permission. There are many sectors which are now covered under 100% automatic route. Some of the sectors which have been included are scheduled air transport services, regional air transport services. So, a lot of services related to travel, tourism, education, healthcare. Now, healthcare, there are two concepts given, greenfield and brownfield projects. So, let's understand what is greenfield project. Greenfield project is something which is started from scratch. When there is an existing company in which investment is FDI stand. So Nikki India Service, now Nikki is a company from Japan who does statistical survey. I think must be audible now. Okay, so Nikki India Services PMI is nothing but a statistical data which government and uses, or many players in the industry uses to understand how a particular sector is performing. That's a statistical data. FDI is foreign direct investment, foreign investments. Okay, so lot of requests for revising this, repeating these is coming. So let me take this once again. Manufacturing and services sectors are merged? No, they are not merged. Now, for a few of the important government initiatives which have been taken are: one, introduction of SEIS scheme by the government, where incentives are provided to the service exporters in the form of duty script credits. Duty script credit is nothing but a document which has a monetary value which can be used against payment of custom duties for importing any goods or services. Now, these duty script credits is calculated, the reward is calculated on the basis of export turnover achieved by the service exporter. Now, it is in the range of 3 to 5% under the midterm review policy, midterm review of the foreign trade policy. 2% increment was given in the SEIS benefits. Now, these benefits, these duty script credits are also eligible for transfer, for they are easily transferable. So they have a monetary value. So if I don't need a duty script credit for any payment of duty because I am not importing anything, then I can sell these duty scrip credits and earn the legitimate income. Next, for the digital uh, sector, digital communication sector, government has been focusing a lot, and there is a lot of investment which has gone into this segment. First, to connect India, because there are still parts of countries where the technology has still not reached, the communication has still not reached, and I'm seeing communication not in terms of the telephones, but in terms of the internet. So that's one of the focus, that there has to be suitable or sufficient infrastructure connects the entire nation. And to ensure that we have necessary infrastructure, we will have to liberalize the sector by opening up the sector for private players, for allowing foreign investors to come, or and for promoting the new entrants in the sector. Many incentives are offered by the government through this National Digital Communication Policy. The third fold mission of the communication policy is also to secure India. When your data is on the internet, there has to be necessary security features also imbibed. And we have seen a lot of frauds happening, cyber crimes happening. Uh, there is a series on Netflix, Jamtara, which talks about hacking and cyber crimes. So it is also important that when we are having everything on the digital platform, we must also have necessary infrastructure which secures the data which is uploaded on the digital world or virtual world. So again, a sector where government has a lot of focus. Another sector which earns a good amount of revenue or contributes majorly to the government is tourism sector, and hence a national tourism policy was introduced where some parts of the country were declared as a must-see destination for global travelers. And again, investment has been made in the tourism sector to promote uh, that more and more citizens from India should first explore their nation rather than going abroad for their tours and vacations. Third sector again, which has gained a lot of focus from the government, is health sector, healthcare sector. So the national health policy was introduced in 2017, and post that also government has been taking a lot of initiatives for improving the quality of healthcare services in the country. So, right, so national health policy has this mission of universal health coverage, and quality of healthcare services also should improve and should be available to all at affordable cost. Another major step taken in the improvement of health coverage is the Ayushman Bharat scheme, which was launched. Another major initiative taken by the government for the service sector is by opening up the sector for foreign investors, and 100% foreign direct investment is allowed in a lot of sectors into services. Some of them are listed in the module, and I have also captured it from there. Now, as regards healthcare, there are two concepts which are given, greenfield and brownfield, and you will see greenfield is covered under automatic route, which means no approval is required, whereas healthcare for brownfield project is covered under auto approval route. Now, what is the difference between greenfield and brownfield? Greenfield is something which has been started from scratch. So, a foreign company comes, invests in the healthcare sector, and start from scratch. We have no issues with that. You can come and set up automatic route, investment is allowed. Brownfield project is when a foreign investor comes and wants to acquire an existing company. That government wants to keep under control. They want to review the proposal and then approve it. Hence, it has been kept under the approval route. So, any investment in the existing project, existing company will be categorized as brownfield project. Why such change or why such discrimination? Because healthcare segment, lot of research and development happens. So one of the major investment in any healthcare, any pharmaceutical company will be research and development. Now government wants to control any investment in existing companies. FIPP is Foreign Investment Promotional Board. So India wants to control or restrict that any company from foreign comes, acquires a existing pharma company, and all the research work which has been done gets easily available to the foreign company, foreign country. That's why government has kept any investment in healthcare primarily in brownfield projects under approval route. This is about the services sector. Now let's go to the 5-year plans, which most of us must have heard some or other time, that government after independence started making these 5 years plans for promoting the agricultural and industrial growth in India. Now, the 5-year plans was a methodology because many countries have their own approach when it comes to as such. So Japan used to have 10-year plans. India adopted these 5-year plans from Russia. And when this Modi government came in, they discontinued these 5-year plans. It's already there, Priyanshi, in the drive. So the last 5-year plan was 2012 to 2017. After that, there is no 5-year plan which has been introduced because the Modi government has discontinued this practice of 5-year plans and it got replaced by Niti Aayog. So we have to study Niti Aayog also in the last chapter, key government institutions. But as of now, I have summarized what are the summary of all the 5-year plans. We'll quickly go through it. It's purely statistical, nothing as a concept. You have this material already available on the Google Drive, so you can download it from there. That will be easy for all of you. I'm again posting the link of Drive. So I suggest all of you to go through these 5-year plans and capture the important facts. I have tried to summarize it and capture some of the facts, important facts. Okay. It's all past, all history, all facts, all statistical data. But you must go through it once to understand. So there were 2 times when the 5-year plans were deferred. One, after 1961-1966 plan, till 69 there were no 5-year plan was introduced. Rather, annual plans were made because in during that 61-66 period, India had to face 2 war situations with Pakistan and China. and hence the country was not able to achieve its growth. So during this time, no 5-year plan was launched. And second time was after 1990. The next 5-year plan was introduced in 92. So 1991 and 91-92, these 2 years also annual form plans were formed. And the IPR stands for both, Kritika. In which context we are using, that's important. So it will be IPR. If you are reading along with industrial policy, yes, it will be industrial policy resolution. But if you are reading along with intellectual property rights, so we'll have to see the context in which it is used. Okay. So during this 1991 and 91-92 situation, there was volatile political situation. Hence, no 5-year plan was introduced. It was introduced in the year 92 only, 92-97. Preferably, yes. So it's very difficult. This is going to be first exam in the new this CSEAT pattern. We don't know what kind of questions are going to come, right? So as much as you are in the dark, I am also in the dark. But what I'm sure of is if you have read the material properly and if you know the important facts, I think you will be able to clear the exam. That is what I can say as of now till we see. Yes, this is the first time CSET is happening. Okay. So we are not going to spend more time on the 5-year plans because it's all facts. I have tried to summarize it. I suggest you to go through it, and if there is anything which you don't understand, I request you to please put it to me on the WhatsApp or maybe in the next session, and we will discuss that. Some industrial policies for industrialization. Yes, it's going to be an online exam. Anything can come, dear. It will be MCQs only. You will be given the options. I really don't have any detail as such, Lakshmi, how the exam will be conducted. I think I'm not the right person for these kind of questions. Industrial Policy Resolution 1948 was the first IPR which was issued by the government after independence. And because we had a history of being ruled by another nation for so many years, obviously it came out in the way we made the policies after that. Without going too much into history, when we were controlled, ruled, it's going to be an exam of a professional level. So it's very difficult to give or shortlist the important concepts. If I would have been at your position, I will never take this approach to focus only on important. It's a very small uh, curriculum, I would say. So don't have this kind of approach. Complete everything and then face the exam. Don't try to focus on the important concepts. Everything is important. Each and every statement in this module is important because you never know from where the MCQs will come. Okay. Now, with the background of being controlled by another country, See, all such queries, I would say, Riddhi, put it to me on WhatsApp. We are unnecessarily wasting the time of the class by discussing related queries. Anything related to subject makes sense. Everything else, I would say, please put it to me on the WhatsApp and I will reply. Yeah. Sorry, your question is legitimate. I am only focusing on using the right forum to resolve it. Don't be sorry for that. Okay, let's continue, and I'm not going to look at the chat box for some time now. So, Industrial Policy Resolution 1948 or 1951 or 1956, because we had the immediate experience of being controlled or ruled by another country, the policy making also exhibited our approach to restrict everything. Hence, during 1948 IPR or in 1956 IPR, Industrial Policy Resolution, government kept a lot of things with them. For each and every company, or you want to set up a new undertaking in a particular sector, take the license, take the permission. And hence we say there was a licensing Raj from independence to 1991. Now, licensing Raj because everything was being controlled. And I'm not saying it was wrong. It was purely because we had a bad experience of allowing some foreign companies or foreign players to come to India and then they started ruling us. So government kept everything very, very conservative, very, very protective, and which was, I would say, not wrong at that point of time. So in 1948 policy, they categorized the industries into four types: strategic, basic, important, and other industries. Strategic were kept only for public. Basic industries were kept open for public as well as private. Then there has important industries which were controlled private, so private players were allowed with control. And then everything else was kept open for everyone. So private and cooperative, all other was open. 368 is the number of sectors which were number of industries which were covered under strategic, 6 industries covered under basic, and 18 industries covered under important industries. Now, these 6, 3, 18 were the regulated and controlled sectors. Everything else was open. Right. So, which were these 3, 6, and 18 sectors? It's given in the module. I think you can go through that. For the public sector, I think 3 sectors which were kind of restricted only for the government was arms and ammunitions, atomic energy, and rail transport. Then there were 6 basic industries which included coal, iron and steel, aircraft manufacturing, and some more. Then there were important industries where 18 sectors were covered. Those sectors included chemicals, sugar, cotton textile, woolen. So these sectors were covered under the important industries. So strategic, no private player allowed. 6 private were allowed, those who were existing before the policy came in. And important, the licensing and registration was introduced. Now, after that, there was an IDR Act 1951, which was introduced, but unfortunately, that what got passed by the Parliament in the October 1991 only. So 40 years later, this came in. Hence, when this came in, most of the provisions of this act were redundant. were not applicable or not in force. Because in 1991, in July, already a new industrial policy was introduced. And at many places, the act and the new policy were contradictory. Still, this act is in force. IDR Act 1951 is still in force. Some of the provisions are redundant today, but remaining are operative, and there is no has been introduced to repeal this. So this act is very much in force, though some of the provisions have got redundant. The objective of this act was to regulate industrial investment and production. So regulate means to control. Industrial Development and Regulation Act. Then protection of small entrepreneurs. Later on, government introduced another law which is called as MSMED Act, Micro Small Medium Enterprises Development Act 2006, if I'm not wrong, primarily to focus on protection of small entrepreneurs. Third, prevention of monopoly and concentration of powers in the few hands is again an important objective. And we have another law which focuses on this objective, which is Competition Act 2002. Why monopoly is not good? Because it exploits the customers. Hence, competition, if it is there in the market, it is for the benefit of both the players in the market as well as the consumers. Prevention of monopoly and promoting competition has always been an important part of the economic growth. And fourth was balanced regional development. So it shouldn't happen that only one region of the country is progressing. The remaining sectors or regions are not growing. So balanced regional development is also something which was the focus of IDR. So there are two types of provisions in this act. One are restrictive. Restrictive provision includes provisions related to registration and licensing, conducting inquiry, investigation, and cancellation of licenses. As regards reformative provisions are concerned, direct regulation, then control on price, distribution, and supply of products in the market, and some constructive measures are included in the reformative provisions of this act. So we don't have to study the entire law, we just need the basics of this law, and hence this much is sufficient. Now 1956 IPR. So after 48, the new industrial policy resolution was introduced in 1956. Sir, there in the drive, share the link once again. After regulate industrial investment and production. This is also private, remained to only. It's not yet private fully. In 1991, licensing Raj prevailed till that time. Okay. IPR 1956 replaced the IPR 1948, and it focused on speeding up the pace of industrialization, expansion of public sector, as well as growth of cooperative sector and private sector, development of transport facilities, and casting a responsibility on the state to take care of the new industrial setups. So state governments were also involved. and lastly, to prevent monopolies and promote competition. After that, 1991 became a very, very important landmark year for the nation because we were in crisis at that time. We had hardly left with economic foreign exchange reserves for few days to survive. And in those scenarios, it was realized that enough of controlling, enough of licensing Raj. Let's open up the economy for foreign players also and private players also. So deregularization happened, delicensing happened in 1991 policy. So some of the important features of the new policy was to focus on strengthening the private sector. Everything cannot be restricted or controlled. Dismantling the controls, releasing the shackles, removing the barriers, entry barriers, exit barriers, dispersing industries. So a lot of focus was given on balanced growth, spreading up of industries all across the nation, limiting the role of public sector and promoting the participation from public, private sector. Liberalization of foreign investment actually started with 1991, which got materialized in the year 1999 by a formation of a new law called Foreign Exchange Management Act, FAME. Then promotion of small scale industries, automatic approvals for foreign technology agreements, no restrictions, liberalized position over there, and abolition of industrial licensing. That was primarily the features of new industrial policy 1991, where delicensing or end of licensing Raj was one of the main step taken by the government. Yes. Again, we don't have to study the entire policy. These are some of the important features. The objective was to raise the efficiency and accelerate the growth. Okay. Let's come to the important topic of balance of payment. Balance of payment, anyone? What is balance of payment? Balance of trade and balance of payment are the two statistical measures which RBI primarily uses, government uses. The responsibility is on the RBI to help in calculation of these statistical aggregates. It's calculated every quarter and every calendar year. These are being calculated. Balance of payment is nothing but I would say the statement of account of all the receipts and payments of the country. Receipts in terms of foreign currency receipts as well as foreign currency payments. Now, balance of trade focuses only on the trade related transactions. Balance of payment includes every other payment into in exports or imports form in foreign exchange currency. Right. So any receipt of foreign currency, foreign exchange will go to the receipt side. Any payment will go to the payment side. Any country receiving investment will go on the receipt side. If they are making investments, making payments outside India, will go on the payment side. Right. So it's a statement of account which has three parts: current account, capital account, and financial account. These are the three parts to the balance of payment. Receipts means receipt of money. difference between export and import. Yes. Put it simply, balance of payment is a statement which records all the monetary transactions between the Indian residents and rest of the world during a given period. It can be a calendar year, it can be a quarter, it can be a period of 3 months. This statement includes the transactions made by the individuals, corporates, governments, anyone within the country, any transactions into foreign exchange. If it is in the form of inflow, it will go to receipts. If it is in the form of outflow, it will go to the payment side. Now, ideally, the inflow and outflow should match, because unless you have earned it, you cannot spend it. That rarely happens, as we have seen in the fiscal deficit budgeting also. Here also there will be differences, and that gap is ideally filled with the borrowings. So balance of payment of a country where receipts are more, inflow is more, it will be said that balance of payment is a surplus. On the other hand, if it is in the deficit, payments are more, then it will be treated as balance of payment is in deficit. So when there will be deficit, when the imports are more than the exports, so the revenue earned is less than the revenue imports payment made. Clear? Okay. Why so payment is important? Because it reveals the financial and economical status of the country. It is used as an indicator to determine whether country's currency value is going up, appreciating or depreciating. And also helps the government to frame the fiscal and trade policies. More, then government will focus on, and if the commodity is available in the local market also, so they will impose more duties on such products. So these decisions are taken primarily looking at the balance of payment. It acts as an indicator. Now, balance of payment includes three elements. It includes current account, it includes capital account, and it includes financial account. Current account means only goods and services exports, which is also nothing but balance of trade. So when you calculate only the difference of import of goods and services vis-a-vis export of goods and services, that is nothing but balance of trade. Capital account is with respect to an asset, you can say. And financial account will include investments. So current account, goods and services. So import of goods will go on the payment side, export of goods will go on the income side, receipts. All the receipts and payments with respect to raw materials, finished goods, services, let's say engineering, tourism, business services, royalty for payment of technology, any technical fees paid or received, consultancy provided, it will go to the current account. Now that is balance of trade. But inflow is not always in the form of export income. Sometimes there is a foreign investment which is received. There are for many players who invest in the stock exchange in India. So foreign institutional investors are there. From there also the inflow is coming in the country. But that is not a part of trade. So first is to understand at trade level whether the imports are more or exports are more. So balance of trade is also calculated separately to understand whether there is surplus or deficit with respect to the balance of trade. As regards capital account is concerned, it includes purchase and sale of assets which are non-financial. Non-financial assets like properties, land and building. It also includes of taxes, purchase of fixed assets, migrants moving out in a different country, and there is purchase or sale of assets will come here. Any borrowings or loans taken from a foreign country, borrowings taken from a foreign country will go to the receipts of a capital account nature. This we have discussed already in the budgeting. What is capital? What is non-revenue? That difference we have seen. Clear? Now, when it comes to financial, it is purely investments. So, any foreign investment, non-financial means in a easy way. Infrastructure, investment in infrastructure, I would say. I think my working fine. So financial will includes investments in like any foreign company making investment in India. Foreign direct investment, you can say, will come under the financial category. Similarly, when an Indian company makes investment outside India, let's say a company in Singapore is acquired by an Indian entity. So again, an outflow is happening, but that is on account of creation of a financial asset, right? But let's say when a company from India goes outside India and makes an investment to buy a property there, then obviously it's a capital account nature because a non-financial asset is being acquired outside India. Similarly, let's say a foreign company comes in India and they acquire a property, then obviously it's a inflow on account of capital asset. Similarly, if a Indian company has taken a loan from a foreign company, then it is a loan, capital account loan, capital receipt, which will go to the capital account. It is not an export. It's a liability which is being created. So it will go in the category of capital account. So assets or liabilities which are non-financial. Okay. Now let's discuss foreign trade policy, foreign investments types and flows. So I'll go through the let's go to the module. So again, this is a statistical data, recent scenario. So go through these facts. Now let's discuss foreign investments in India. So there are two types of investments primarily, foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment. There is no third category, even though they mention here FII. It's nothing but a portfolio investment. So there are only two types, FDI, FPI. Now, direct investment means, yes, we will teach and discuss business environment also. Direct investment means those investments where a company has made investment in another company with the intention to acquire the control over the affairs. For example, a company, if you are making an investment in the stock exchange, you are not interested in who is the director on the board, whether I want to be a director or not. You invest in the stock exchange, shares on the stock exchange, primarily to earn a return on your investment. Any such investment in a company which is done through stock exchange, through secondary market, is nothing but a portfolio investment. When I say direct investment, an investment directly into the company with the intention to acquire the stake and control the affairs, that investment is known as foreign direct investment. Investment by NRI, foreign national, foreign institutional investors, any person from foreign on the stock exchange through the stock exchange is treated as portfolio investment. So these are the two categories on a broader level. There is no third category, but in the book we have been given third category as a separately as investment by foreign institutional investors, FII. Right now, as per the policy, as per the rules regulations, there are only two types because FII is nothing but a part of a portfolio investment only. So here, if you'll see, FDI is an investment made by the company who is as an entity in one country in the form of controlling ownership in business. So here the focus is to control the ownership, maybe have their directors nominated. FDI should be in the form of either establishing business operations or entering into joint ventures by mergers and acquisition, building new facilities, etc. So any foreign company comes to India, sets up a company or enters a joint venture, it's foreign direct investment. Portfolio investment is an investment by foreign entities and non-residents in Indian securities, including shares, bonds, corporate bonds, convertible securities, infrastructure securities. The intention is to ensure a controlling interest in India at an investment that is lower than FDI with flexibility for entry and exit. Right? So no controlling interest as such is they focused. Mergers and acquisition, when two companies merge and create a third company, or acquisition is when one company acquires another company. Third is foreign institutional investment. It's an investment by entities in securities, real property, other investment assets. Investors include mutual fund companies, hedge fund companies. Intention is not to take controlling interest, but to diversify portfolio, ensuring hedging and to gain high returns with quick entry and exit. Yes. So foreign institutional investors and foreign portfolio investors, investments happen through stock exchange, through uh, is primarily a direct investment direct into the company. Any investment by a foreign player in the company with the interest, with the focus to have the controlling stake will be treated as foreign direct investment. Hedging is a process where companies use the strategies to mitigate the risks, mitigate the financial risks. So it's a kind of fund you can say where a pool is created and investment is made so as to reduce the risk. So we've been given few differences between FDI and FII. In FDI, the entry and exit will be difficult because you are investing and becoming a part of the company. But if you are investing through stock exchange, there is no restriction on exit. You can take the exit when you want to sell it. So you just have to sell the investment and you will be out of the investment. So it's very easy on the stock exchange, but if it is a direct investment, then it's very difficult because then you have to follow the provisions of Companies Act, either go through the buyback or liquidation. That's the only option, or find a buyer who can acquire your investment. That's why FDI entry and exit is difficult. In FII, it's easy. When a company situated in one country makes an investment in another company situated abroad, it is known as FDI. FII is when foreign companies make investment in the stock market of a country. That's the basic difference. It brings long-term capital because FDI is of long-term nature. It is more investment in the company, long or short term. So it's not necessary that FII will always have short term. Some investment can be on a long term basis also, but primarily it will be short term. FDI cannot be short term, it has to be a long term investment. Transfer of funds, resources, technology, strategy, know how, etc. Here it's only investment in the form of funds, no other collaboration happening here. Economic growth, yes. FII, no, because here only the foreign institutional investors are gaining. The company whose shares they acquire, they don't get a single rupee, and neither the government gets a single rupee out of it. It is the market in which a player comes, invests, makes profit, and go out. A financial transaction happens in the jurisdiction of the nation. Increase in country's GDP, yes, because a new company is being set up, expansion of production facilities will happen. So obviously GDP will increase. Here it is capitalization happens only. No. So you have to refer to the module only and not the amendments which have happened recently. In FDI, the target is specific company. In FII, there is no target company because here it is in the financial market. Whether control over a company is obtained, yes. In FDI, no in FII. Clear? So foreign institutional investors, there are many foreign institutional investors who keep on investing in the stock market. No direct investment in the countries a company is happening. Similarly, there is a difference between FDI and FPI. FDI refers to the investment made by investors to obtain substantial interest in the company located in another country. Yes, stock market, financial market is, as of now, you can see it's one in the same. Stock market is a financial market. Role of investors is active. They participate in the management, they participate in the decision making. Degree of control is very high because uh, so there are limits. So FDI, FPI, we are not going to too much into the details. As of now, focus on whether the control is going or not. It is a management of projects is efficient because investor also participates in the discussion. Investment is in physical assets in the company, either by way of setting up a new company or a JV. Entry exit difficult, यहाँ पे easy. Results transfer of funds, so the same points which we discussed in the earlier comparison. FPI and international investors invest in passive holdings of enterprise. It is known as FPI. Degree of control is very less. Role of investor is passive. He is not interested in what company does. JV is joint venture. Here it is a short-term investment, appreciation, capital appreciation, and he will leave the investment. Comparatively less efficient. It's only investment in the financial assets, not in the company. It is in the financial market only. it only brings capital inflows to the country and not anything else in the form of technology or other resources. So these are the two differences you can go through to understand the concepts. But again, I will say there is only two types of investments, FDI and FPI. Anything less than 10% by a foreign institutional investor is categorized as FPI. If it goes beyond 10%, then it comes in the category of foreign direct investment. So that is the easiest way of identifying. Now these limits are undergoing change. So it's not the 10% will remain forever because there is change in the FEMA provisions which were supposed to be effective from April 2020. But as of now, there is still no clarity because of this COVID situation. So very soon we'll come to know. So I have created a notes out of this chapter. This is how I prepare the notes. I have put it in the drive also. Clear? So go through the chapters. This chapter, understand the facts. If there is any doubt, put it to me on the WhatsApp or email. Give me some time to reply. And next session, you will get the link from the institute. Even I haven't got it. We will get it during weekend. And next session, we will cover the financial markets. Okay. So much. And I'll connect with you again in the next week. God bless you and have a wonderful weekend.